Hey guys, so I know I'm a little late to the party when it comes to draft content. The draft was a little bit ago now, and the buzz around it is kind of dying down a little bit, but I still wanted to come on here and just throw in my 2 cents on some of my favorite and my least favorite picks from the NBA draft. So without further ado, let's get into it. So we're going to start with some of my favorite teams in the draft, and as you can see here, I have some grades for the picks. And before we get into it, I just want to say don't get too worked up over the grades. I know you might disagree with them. I'll be the first person to say that I'm no draft expert. And when it comes to player evaluation, no one really knows what we're getting from these players 100%. Even the people whose job this is get it wrong all the time. So this is just my opinion, and let's get into it. So starting with one of my favorite teams from this draft that just happened is the Utah Jazz. They used their 10th overall pick on Cody Williams, who I like as a prospect, but I don't know, there's just something missing there. He doesn't have that wow factor for me. So I think he'll be a good player, but he's not a guy that I see becoming anything too special. So it earns a B grade from me. He'll be a good player. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he'll live up to some of the star power that his brother has, but I just personally don't see that in the cards for him. Now these other two picks that the Jazz have, I really like. Number 29 and number 32, Isaiah Collier and Kyle Filipowski. Now it's not that I just love these prospects overall, it's where the Jazz were able to get them in the draft. This is great value to get these guys at 29 and 32. Going into this college season, Collier was a guy who was seen as potentially the number one pick overall, or a top 5 kind of guy. And for him to, have some struggles at USC, but also show a lot of flashes of why he was viewed so highly, I think getting him at 29 is great value for the Jazz, which earns an A grade overall for that pick. And then Kyle Filipowski. I don't think anyone took more of a beating in the media during and after the draft than Kyle Filipowski. There was all this weird stuff about his girlfriend being older than him and being estranged from his family and just like all this stuff. But as far as what happens on the basketball court, Kyle Filipowski is a good player. Tall guy, 6'11", 7 feet, can shoot threes, can handle the ball a little bit. And, solid playmaker for a big. I like getting him at number 32. I just hope all his off-court issues get sorted out, if they're issues at all. I don't know anything about the situation, so that's why I gave the Jazz an A+ for their draft overall. Next, we're going to look at another easy favorite of mine, and that's the Chicago Bulls getting Mattis Buzelis at number 11. Now, he was their only pick in this draft, but I think they hit it out of the park with this one, although I can't give the Bulls too much credit, because he kind of just fell in their laps. Buzelis was a guy that I think a lot of us thought would go at number 5 to the Pistons, but he ended up sliding all the way to number 11. I think he's a decent fit for the Bulls. If his shot comes around, he should be really good. And he's a Chicago kid, he's from the city, he's from the area. It's just a great story overall. I'm sure you've seen the clips of his brother crying at the draft when he got drafted to the Bulls. Just a pretty good story overall. And I like seeing him get drafted to the Bulls, so A+ on the pick. And I didn't give them an overall A+, I gave him an A just because, he kind of just fell into their laps. It's not like they did anything too crazy. And also, it was their only pick. So overall A for the Bulls, A+ on the pick. Moving on. Now we're going to take a look at the Wizards. They kind of had an easy decision at number 2, taking Alex Sarr. The only reason that didn't get an A+ from me is because, there wasn't really a tough choice to make. It was kind of a no-brainer. So A on that pick, easy. Getting Bub Carrington at number 14. They actually traded for that pick from the Blazers. They gave him Denny Avdia and got Malcolm Brogdon in the number 14 pick. They took Bub Carrington, who I like to a certain degree. He looks like he could be a bucket. I don't know how much playing time he's going to get, but he's an interesting player worth keeping an eye on, and I like that they got him at 14 moving into the draft with even more picks rather than, just staying stagnant and trying to run their team back. And at number 24, Keyshawn George. I'm going to be honest, I'm not the most well-versed on his game. I've read a little bit about him, and he seems like a good player, good value at number 24. I think he could be a solid player in the NBA. I don't see him becoming a star. So, B on that pick overall. An A+ on their draft. They got 3 players that I think could be good players for them. Alex Sarr, obviously, I think is the highest ceiling, and Bub Carrington. Maybe we could see him averaging 15 to 20 points in the league at some point. So overall, A+. Next, we're going to look at the team with the number 1 overall pick, the Atlanta Hawks. Now, it seems like a lot of people are kind of low on their first overall pick in Zachary Richeshe. I hope I said that right. But for me, it's kind of weird because I think earlier in the year when I was evaluating these draft prospects, I really liked Richeshe. But as it went on, I kind of cooled off on him a little bit. But I still like him overall. I just don't know how I feel about him going first overall. So overall, I like him as a prospect, so I give it an A-. But I think there were maybe some prospects with higher upside. But also, I really don't know what the Hawks are going for next season. So I can't be too harsh or too critical of the pick. So A- on the pick. And then number 43, I know I'm going to say this wrong, but Nikola Jurisic, something like that. B on the pick. Number 43, I think he's a good value. He's actually a prospect that I kind of really liked. Not in the way that I think he's guaranteed going to be a really good player. I think he could develop into an interesting 6-man, 7th-man kind of player. He has a lot of confidence taking shots. It's just a matter of whether he can make the shots or not. Decent playmaker, decent size, should be an interesting prospect to keep an eye on. So overall, B+ on the draft for the Hawks. Next, I want to look at one of the teams that was one of my least favorite picks and just overall teams in the draft, and that's the Charlotte Hornets. Now, before you get mad at me for giving Tidjane Salaün a D overall grade, and hopefully I said his name right, but I don't like this pick for the Hornets for 3 reasons. 1, Tidjane Salaün is a kind of prospect that I generally am not the highest on. He has a lot of athletic and physical tools, a lot of length, a lot of height, a lot of athleticism, but no real skills that are interesting or look like they're sort of NBA ready. Even his defense, he has all the tools to be a great defender, but his on-ball defense is reportedly not the best at the moment. So while he has the tools to be a great defender, he still needs to work into that, and he's not a proven shooter, not really a ball handler. I just don't like players that don't really have any skills that look like that they could translate to the NBA. One of the funny things about him that I read was that he wasn't a good shooter until this year, and then I was like, oh, what did he shoot? He shot like 32% from 3, and I was like, well, that's not that good. So him being a good shooter this year was shooting 32 from 3. So that's not the best sign to me. Second reason why I don't like this pick is because I just think it was too high. I think there's a chance that he could be a good player, but there are just other players that I like better, and I think should have gone ahead of him that I would have liked to see the Hornets take, or actually I wouldn't like to see the Hornets take them because I don't like the Hornets, but being objective, I think there were better prospects to take for them at that time. And then that brings me to the third reason why I don't like this pick for the Hornets, because I have absolutely no confidence in the Hornets to develop this draft pick. This being the kind of player that I think really depends on being handled and developed in the right way, the Hornets are just a franchise that I don't trust or believe in to do that at all. But yeah, and then AJ Simpson in the second round at number 42. Looking at him, he seems like a nice guy. Got a solid game. I think he could maybe end up being a decent player. But overall, he's a second round pick. even though I gave it a B grade overall. He probably won't be that impactful for this team. I just like what he could possibly be, but I wouldn't be counting on him to really be that great. I just think it's solid value at number 42. So overall, I gave the Hornets a D. Probably my least favorite of the draft. Next, I want to take a look at the LA Lakers, and their first round pick in Dalton Connect, I think, is absolutely the steal of the draft. I'm surprised he fell so low. I know why. It's because of his age. But I'm surprised. I actually wrote an article about the Portland Trail Blazers and how I thought he'd be a solid pick for them at 7. I didn't think Klingon would still be there at 7, so I'm not mad that they took Klingon. But I really like what I think Dalton Connect can do on offense, and I think he could be a solid defender given his athleticism and decent size. But him falling all the way to 17, I think he's the perfect player for the Lakers. He's a wing who can shoot the ball, hopefully play a little bit of defense, 4-year college guy, more NBA ready than a lot of the other players in the draft. This might not really be that big of a thing, but it might. Maybe a guy that JJ Redick could kind of relate to and have a little bit of a rapport with them both being 4-year college guys. Kind of a similar background in that way. Maybe that'll play some sort of factor in bringing the best out of them, but that's just speculation on, nothing, so who cares about that? And then their second round pick at number 55, Bronny James, I gave it a C, and some people might be mad. They're like, that's way too high. Other people will be like, only a C, but I think that Bronny James will have almost zero impact on the court this season. He might have like one crazy game at some point where he does something, but I don't expect Bronny to have any real impact on the Lakers season as far as wins. But for the Lakers, them, having LeBron James, but I just think it's a good story. It's cool. I think it's good for LeBron. I think it's good for, it's just good overall. Even if he's not the best player, I gave it a C because of the LeBron factor. It's just interesting at least. So give it a C. Giving the Lakers an overall grade of an A because I think Dalton Connect, that's a home run. And then Bronny James, it's really cool, but from a purely basketball standpoint, it's kind of like, But yeah, I hope he has a good career. I hope Bronny James gets in there and just absolutely kills it. I hope he proves people wrong, but I don't know. Now let's take a look at one of my other least favorite teams from the draft, and that's the San Antonio Spurs. Although I will say, the fact that this is the Spurs kind of makes me question myself. Like, should this be one of my least favorite? Because if the Spurs are doing it, it must be smart, right? There's part of my brain that's definitely thinking that. But just looking at it from my perspective, the fact that it's the Spurs, take that out of the picture, I don't love it. Now, Stephen Castle, I don't know which one it is, I give it a B overall because for me personally, looking at him, I thought he looked like a good player. I just don't really know if there's anything special about him that'll make him stand out at the NBA. I think he'll be a solid player. I think he'll be maybe a starting quality guard. But I don't really believe in him that much. Maybe I should. The Spurs probably know something that I don't. I'm sure they do. But I'm just not the highest on Castle. And then Harrison Ingram at 48. Second round pick, so can't get too excited over it. But looks like he could be a good 3-and-D player in the league. And you can never have too many 3-and-D players. But what I really don't love about the Spurs draft is that they got Rob Dillingham at number 8, who I don't know if he was a great fit, but I kind of liked him as a fit with the Spurs. I thought he could have been solid there. And they just kind of gave him to Minnesota for some future first rounders that may or may not be okay. But that aside, they also got Johnny Furphy at 35 and then traded him away, which I didn't really like. I thought Furphy was worth keeping around, especially at number 35. This was a guy who was projected to go possibly in the late teens, early 20s. So getting him at 35, I thought he was definitely worth keeping around, and I actually really liked that pick for the Spurs. But then they traded him away, and I was kind of like, what are the Spurs doing? Maybe they're just trying to bring in assets so that they can trade for bigger name players to pair alongside Wemby. I guess that would make sense. So overall, I gave the Spurs a C+. Honestly, I only gave them that plus because they're the Spurs, and I have some faith in them as an organization. Originally, I was going to give them a C, but I don't love this draft from the Spurs, me personally. But at the same time, it's the Spurs, so I partially believe in it either way. Now that brings us to the Grizzlies, and this might be a little bit polarizing, but I'm pretty high on Zach Edey. I think Zach Edey can be a competitive NBA player. I think he can be solid. He's got a proven post-game that I definitely think will translate. I do wonder about his fit on the Grizzlies. I know they could use a center, and they really wanted a center. And as a big who stays at the rim, he's a decent defender. Obviously, when people put him in motion, it's a little dicey. But I hope it works out with the Grizzlies. I know that they like to push the pace a lot when they're healthy. Will he be able to keep up? I think he will. He's an athlete. He played other sports than just basketball. He played a lot of minutes every game in college his senior year. So I think he'll be fine. I think it's just the kind of perception that, he's slow-footed. How's he going to keep up in this fast-paced offense? But I think he'll be fine. I'm surprised he went that high, though. I wasn't expecting to see him go at 9. But I like Edey overall. I'm excited to watch him play. I'm more excited to watch Edey play in the NBA than I've been excited for a lot of prospects. And then now focusing on their second-round picks, Jalen Wells and Cam Spencer at 39 and 53 respectively. I love both those picks for the Grizzlies. They're just two great shooters. Jalen Wells, really good shooter. Cam Spencer, also a knockdown shooter. These are two guys that I think could possibly crack the rotation and just knock down some threes. Cam Spencer, there's a lot of concerns about him on the defensive side of the ball, but he plays hard, has a good feel for the game. I think he'll be able to stick around for a bit, at least in the NBA. So yeah, I really like this draft overall for the Grizzlies. It just depends on your opinion about Zach Edey, I guess. Now I want to focus on one that I'm really not sure how I feel about it, and that's the Portland Trail Blazers. So they got Donovan Clingan at number 7, which I think is solid. I didn't think Clingan would still be there at 7, but I do worry a little bit about the fit. Are they going to give him a lot of minutes? What's going to happen with Ayton? But overall, I like bringing him into this team. He should be a really good defensive center. Should be able to do some stuff on offense. Should be a good NBA player. And then they traded number 14 in Brogdon to the Wizards for Denny Avdia. At first, I didn't really know how I felt about that, but especially considering Denny Avdia's contract, I don't know if you've seen it, but he's under contract for like 4 more years on a descending salary, so his annual value gets lower every year, so that by the end he's only going to make like $11 million in that last season. That's a pretty good contract, and I like it for the Blazers in that even though they might not be super competitive right now, this is a step in that direction. He's a real player who's going to play solid defense. Him and Clingan are going to play solid defense. And he's a good connecting piece on offense. So I like him for the Blazers. And if it doesn't work out, they can move him and get some assets in the future, especially because of that valuable contract he's on and just all the things he can do on the court. Now, they traded away number 34 and 40 for like future second round picks. I don't know how I feel about that. There were a few prospects I think I would have liked them to go after rather than just trading away the picks. Like, for example, at 34, if they kept that one, they could have gone after Johnny Furphy, who is still there. And then at 40, I think I really would have liked them to pick up a guy like Cam Spencer just to provide some spacing. But, I don't mind them trading them away for future seconds, just bring in those assets. Not the worst thing in the world. So overall, I gave them a B. I was going back and forth between B and B minus. I'm kind of up in the air on the Blazers draft. Next, the Philadelphia 76ers, and they had a draft that I actually really liked. Jared McCain fell all the way down to 16, and they were able to scoop him up there. And he's just an elite shooter from three, or he should be at least. We have to see him play an actual NBA game, but he should be a really good shooter. He does lack some size, and they already have Tyrese Maxey, who's a little bit on the smaller side, but he should be a good player for the Sixers, whether he's coming off the bench or starting sometimes. I think he's someone who's going to get some good shots. Embiid, with the gravity that he has, should be able to get McCain some open looks. I think he'll fit in nicely on this team, especially now they have like Paul George, Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid. With Jared McCain there as an exciting rookie, this should be an interesting team. And then number 41, getting a Diem Bona. This is a guy that I really liked. He was one of my favorite second round prospect guys. He was also a guy that I would have been interested in seeing Portland take a swing on at number 40. But they already took Donovan Clingan, so drafting two centers wouldn't have made sense. That's if they drafted a smaller player at 7, but let's not get carried away with the Blazers. We're talking about the Sixers. I like Bona for the Sixers. They have brought in Andre Drummond, so now Bona would probably be their third. Actually, he might be their fourth string center. They still have Paul Reed, don't they? So yeah, I don't even know if Bona's gonna really be on the roster that much. He might be a two-way guy. But I like him as a second-round draft pick. I think he has a lot of defensive upside. He has a monstrous wingspan. He's a very explosive athlete. Should be a quality rebounder, high motor, good rim protector. Not the most polished offensive game, but he should be a lob threat. Just a guy I like, a guy with a lot of hustle that I think could carve out a role in the NBA. So overall, A for the 76ers. To just touch on the Orlando Magic real quick, they got Tristan da Silva at number 18. I gave this a B+ overall because I think da Silva will be a really good NBA player. I don't think he'll be a star. I think he'll be a solid plug-and-play piece. He'll be able to shoot threes, play defense, have the ball in his hands a little bit maybe down the line. But he was just one of my favorite prospects overall going into the draft. And I'm excited to see what he'll do in Orlando. Now, penultimately, let's talk about the Houston Rockets. There's not that much to talk about. They got Reed Shepherd at number 3. He's a prospect I really like. His three-point percentage was absolutely insane in college. You should go take a look at his stats if you haven't seen them. He shot over 50% from 3, which that's just mind-boggling to me. I can't understand how he did that. But I like it for the Rockets. Should be a good young guard presence for them. I know they have Van Vliet, and he was pretty good for them, but I like that they're bringing in a young guy who should be a part of this team going forward. Whether he is able to reach any sort of star-level play, I don't really know, but he should be a rock-solid option at guard moving forward. So, A overall. And finally, that brings me to the last team I wanted to talk about, the Detroit Pistons. So you'll probably notice that I gave the pick at number 5, Ron Holland, a B-. Now, that's not because I don't like Ron Holland in himself. I just don't love the pick for the Pistons. He's another guy that probably won't be able to space the floor, at least not anytime soon. He's the kind of player that seemingly will need the ball in his hands a decent amount to really get the most out of him. And they already have a lot of players like that. Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, even a guy like Asur Thompson. He's not providing any spacing, so I don't know how they're going to run all these players out there who just can't provide any spacing for each other. I don't love the fit. I do believe in Ron Holland a little bit, so there is that. I like Ron Holland overall. I just don't love it for the Pistons at number 5. So that's why I gave it a B-. But I hope to see some really good things from Ron Holland. And then Bobby Klintman at 37. I gave it a B+, just because, it's a second-round pick. I think he's decent value for a second-round pick. Could potentially be a stretch 4. He's got decent size, decent athleticism. Should be an interesting player for the Pistons, but I don't predict him to have any immediate impact for this team. But yeah, overall, B- for the draft, mostly because of the Ron Holland pick. The second round pick, second round picks are cool, but they're not as impactful. They're not as important. So even if you did really well in the second round, you drafted a guy that's like, oh yeah, he can shoot really well. It's still a second round pick. It's not like the Kyle Filipowski pick where it's like, yeah, that guy could have gone in the early 20s, but teams decided that they didn't like him, so he fell to the second round. But yeah, that's all I got as far as grading these draft picks go. Let me know where I got it wrong, where maybe you agreed, and what you thought of the video overall. But also, I just want to close things out, guys, by reiterating that I am by no means saying that I'm 100% right about any of these prospects. I know that any of them could go in a multitude of directions throughout their career. I could be completely wrong about some guys. Maybe I'm right about some guys, but it's far more likely that I'm wrong. So just remember, we're just here to have fun and talk about the NBA. But yeah, that's all I had. If you're still watching at this point and you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing to the channel and maybe liking the video. I really appreciate it. It helps me out, it helps the channel grow. And with that being said, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.